G'day legends, I hope you're all amazing. On today's video, I want to do a very quick side-by-side comparison and share my thoughts on the PRS DGT Core against its SE version. I bought this Core a little over a year ago. I love it so much. It is probably the nicest guitar that I own. It's super versatile and it's just a beautiful instrument. Everything about this guitar works for what I like to do. I liked it so much, in fact, that I thought it might be a good idea to check out the SE version, and I like the SE so much that I bought the SE as well. We're going to hear some side-by-side clips with these guitars, and I do want to talk about some of the differences in the way these guitars are constructed, as well as some of the specs. The first big difference, of course, is the price. If you wanted to buy a Core DGT in Australia, it's probably going to cost you at least 6,000 Australian dollars, probably closer to 7, whereas you can go into just about any music store in Australia at the moment and pick up one of the SE versions for about 1,500 bucks. So there's at least a 4-to-1 ratio on the price there. We'll talk about whether I think that is worth it at the end of the video. But in short, I think this is the best SE guitar that PRS make for a couple of different reasons. But first, let's hear a couple of tones. We're going to hear the split sounds on these guitars, because I think one of the awesome aspects of this guitar is just how good the split coil sounds are on here. And they're doing that with an interesting wiring rather than just disabling an entire coil. They're inserting a resistor in there so that you're actually not taking out the entire second coil on there. It gives you some really fat kind of vintage Strat style sounds out of this guitar. And to me, if I was going to recommend any PRS to anybody and say, hey, this is what they do best, it would be one of these guitars. And one of the reasons would be because the split tones are so awesome. Then we'll hear some full-on humbucker sounds with some gain on here. So this isn't going to be a comprehensive test. It's just a couple of sounds that I actually use all the time on both of these guitars. So you can definitely hear that they have far more in common than they do different. To me, the Core is just that little bit fuller sounding across the entire guitar. It's almost like there's this little bit of compression on everything, whereas the SE is just a little bit brighter. I don't think either is a good thing or a bad thing, but there are some differences in there regarding the way these sound plugged in. They do sound a little bit different acoustically as well. I think a lot of people will write off those acoustic differences, and I don't want to get into the whole tone wood debate here, but this guitar definitely sounds different to this one unplugged. It could be that they've got a different bridge. It could be just the differences in the materials they're constructed in. It could be a whole bunch of other factors in there, but I want you to hear the difference of these unplugged. This is kind of important to me because I actually play my electric guitars unplugged around the house quite a lot. And before I even plug a guitar into an amp, I'm going to play it unplugged when I'm tuning it up. So hearing how it sounds there is probably going to influence how I end up dialing in the amp. Check this out. This is pretty interesting. This definitely has a lot more zing about it. There's kind of this really crisp, bright top end, probably not as full sounding. For an electric guitar unplugged, I really like the way this one sounds. And, if I get this one in here, this has the PRS bridge, the kind of standard thing on there. This has the SE version of this bridge, and you can see the saddles are different on there. I'm actually not super clued up as to what the differences are. There's also a different block in there, and I know that is going to make some subtle tonal differences in there. Again, I'm not trying to like add up all the differences and make this some kind of, they sound different because, but these two guitars do sound different. They do have some different specs in there. These are the USA PRS DGT pickups, which I think sound phenomenal. Like I said, those split tones are awesome. And I love playing this guitar on the channel because I can use one guitar for sweet chimey cleans and super chunky distorted tones on there. I can do the same with this as well. And I have gigged both guitars in different contexts and basically just use them interchangeably. And that's one thing that I think they really nailed with the SE. It definitely kind of cops the core flavor and, workflow of the DGT if you're used to playing one. The big difference in terms of playability, I think these have the same frets on them, but it's actually the neck carve on there. This definitely feels wider, feels a lot more like my PRS McCarty. This has a narrower kind of nut on here, and the overall carve is just a little bit different. My hands are relatively big, and they actually kind of like the wider neck on the SE a little bit more. I don't dislike the neck on the core, but if the core had the same neck as the SE, I would not be complaining because I actually find the SE version a little bit more comfortable, which is a wild thing to say. The other thing as well is the carve is different on there. And let me put that one down. This kind of has the classic PRS carve and contour that if you've ever played a PRS, you know what's going on there. This one is a little bit different. It doesn't kind of have that kind of big lush violin carve. It sort of feels like a flat top with just enough of a carve on there. I don't get the sore forearm like I do when I get a Telly, but it's like not as beveled as the core PRS or a Strat. The other thing as well on this one, you can see the binding on the side. That's just a kind of plain maple binding over there. There's not a whole lot of imperfections on this, whereas because this has a lovely carved top as well, you can kind of see the binding on the edge, especially there if that focuses, is nice and figured. And this thing is just kind of premium. Everything about it screams, do you need this? Maybe not. Do you want to not have it? I don't think so once you've got it on there. Stuff like the locking tuners on here as well. Looking at the back of the guitar, seeing the exposed gears. I really like the buttons they're using on here. I have changed the tuners on the SE to the PRS SE locking tuners. I much prefer it. If I had one criticism of this guitar, it's at a great price point. It sounds great. It's super playable. I love just about everything about it, but I feel like it should come with the locking tuners as standard. Having to pay 100 Australian dollars or whatever it is to upgrade the tuners, I'm totally fine with. I just rather pay that at the gate and have it be a little bit more expensive, but not have to change the tuners out on there. I think it would make for the whole guitar just being a little bit more premium at its price point. locking tuners are awesome. They save so much time. Having the bridge on here as well, it's going to make it a little bit more stable as well. And it's probably going to bring it a little more in line with the core model. So look, this is a fantastic instrument, whether it says PRS on it, whether it says DGT or not. I think this is one of the best value electric guitars that you can buy at the moment, the way they've been able to take so many of the elements from the core and use it to make a great instrument that just about any working musician can afford. I really can't fault PRS there. Again, maybe it would be nice to have the locking tuners as a factory option on there. The core though, you know, this is just one of the best guitars that money can buy, period. I am so fortunate to have this instrument. It looks great. It plays great. It inspires me every single time I pick it up. And is that worth the 4-to-1 price ratio? I think if you have the money and the means to get a core DGT, do it. You know, I'm not saying don't go and buy 4 DGT SEs because I think that's awesome, but you won't die wondering with this kind of thing. And, you know, I do spend a lot of time on the channel facilitating gear acquisition syndrome, but at the end of the day, I think the best advice with this kind of thing is if you can afford it, just get the best thing that you can afford. And this is definitely one of the best electric guitars money can buy. I think this is a fantastic electric guitar. And if you're looking to spend less than 2,000 Australian dollars, it's one of the best guitars that you can lay your hands on at the moment. That's just me though. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've played either of these particular PRS models. Let me know in the comments section below. I know some people kind of agreed with me and preferred the neck on the SE, and I know some people weren't into the SE at all and they just prefer the core and the super premium thing that PRS do. What a time to be alive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you like what I'm doing on the channel, you can support me directly on Patreon or buy some of the music that I make with Ragdoll. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.